My friends, have you ever built your whole life around motion only to realize one day that you forgot how to stop? Have you ever chased progress until it replaced presence, believing that speed was the same thing as meaning? I did. For years, I thought stillness was weakness. I believed that love could wait until after the mission was complete, that feeling deeply might pull me off course. But one day, I looked around, surrounded by everything I'd ever worked for, and felt nothing but quiet. Not peace, just quiet. And in that quiet, I realized what I had lost. There was someone who saw me before the noise, someone who held my chaos without trying to fix it, someone who deserved to know what I never said, that she changed everything. This is not a story about regret, it's a story about recognition, about remembering what all the building was for. Love is not the distraction from greatness. Love is the gravity that keeps greatness human. And today, I want to tell the truth I should have said long ago, the truth that still lives between us like breath between heartbeats. I used to think strength meant silence, that if I just endured long enough, if I kept moving, something would eventually make sense. Success was louder back then. It filled the space where connection should have lived. I convinced myself that love was a luxury, a soft place I hadn't earned yet. But she changed that. She didn't arrive to rescue me. She arrived to mirror me, to show me what I had been running from under the name of ambition. Her presence was disarming. She didn't compete with my dreams, she questioned the emptiness I was protecting beneath them. You see, no one tells you how lonely it can feel when you finally get everything you wanted. The applause fades, the noise returns, and there, beneath the brilliance of achievement, you meet yourself, all the parts you postponed. She met me there. She didn't try to fix the story. She just stood in the silence with me and said more through her stillness than I had heard in years. I realized then that love doesn't demand you abandon your mission. It asks that you remember why you began. Before her, I equated vulnerability with weakness. After her, I learned it's the doorway to everything lasting. The bravest act I've ever known wasn't in conquering something outside, it was in letting someone in. She taught me that presence isn't a pause from purpose, it's the proof of it. For the first time, I understood that it wasn't the distance I wanted, it was depth. The slow, steady rhythm of being known, of knowing someone back. I remember how she would notice the smallest things, the way I bit my lip when thinking, the slight shift in my tone when I was avoiding truth. She paid attention in ways that made me uncomfortable and then alive. Attention, after all, is love's first language. It asks nothing but sincerity in return, and that's where I faltered. Because sincerity requires surrender. It doesn't negotiate with pride. It doesn't care how much you've accomplished. It only cares whether you're here. Really here. I wasn't ready then. I was standing at the doorway of my own heart, too afraid to let the light in. But that's the thing about love. It doesn't need immediate acceptance. It waits. It lingers like memory until you're brave enough to face it. I think about her sometimes, about how she probably doesn't even know what she gave me. She thought she was just showing up, but in truth, she was saving me, not from failure, but from forgetting what it means to feel. I owe her that acknowledgement. This story, this confession, it's not about romance. It's about redemption, about remembering that connection isn't optional. It's survival in disguise, because without it, all this light means nothing. All this progress turns hollow, and all this strength just becomes the armor we die behind. I know that now. She deserves to know that too. She taught me that silence isn't absence. It's a question, a mirror. The sound of your own heart asking, "Are you paying attention?" For the longest time, I wasn't. I kept mistaking motion for meaning, productivity for peace, leadership for love. I could captain a team through chaos but couldn't sit still in the company of one person who saw me too clearly. She saw through my armor. That scared me. Because when someone sees you beyond the achievements, when they look right past the image the world applauds, they get close enough to touch the fault lines. And she did. Not to expose them, to understand them. She didn't want the version of me that dazzled the crowd. She wanted the man who wasn't sure he deserved to be loved without earning it. And that man, the one buried beneath deadlines and pride, didn't know how to respond. I remember thinking love was momentum, that if it slowed down it meant it was dying. But love thrives in stillness, in watching, in noticing, in letting time breathe. She moved like water, patient, persistent, knowing that the strongest forces never rush. I didn't understand then, but she was teaching me presence long before I had language for it. It's strange the things that stay with you after someone leaves. A gesture, a laugh, the way she said my name when she wanted me to listen. Those details stretch time. They make you realize love doesn't vanish with distance. It transforms into attention. It becomes the awareness you carry everywhere after. Looking back, I see the fear that kept me quiet. The fear of saying too much, of needing too deeply. Men are told that love should be a reward, not a requirement. That presence should be earned, not offered. But she unlearned me. She showed me that trust isn't built by guarding, it's built by staying. Staying when conversation fades. Staying when truth trembles. Staying when you're no longer sure what comes next. Presence over promises. That was her gospel. She never promised forever. She promised honesty. And I broke that silence too late. Because what I should have said, the truth that's etched in me now, is that I needed her more than I wanted to admit. I thought independence was victory. I thought love would slow me down. Instead, without it, I stalled. The world saw success, but she saw the drift. And she was right. Achievement without connection is exhaustion dressed as glory. It's a slow exile that no one else can see. But she did. And she loved me anyway. That's why this is for her. Because she deserves to know that I finally understand. That nothing I've built matters more than what she made me feel, human, fallible, alive. If she's listening now, I'd tell her this. I'm not running anymore. I've stopped. I've learned to stay. Some truths take years to surface. I used to think love would distract me from my purpose, narrow my vision, dilute my ambition. But in losing her, I learned that loneliness is a different kind of distraction. Slow, numbing, persistent. It seeps into your victories until celebration feels like an obligation, until all your achievements start to echo back the same question, was it worth the cost? She was never a prize to be won or a puzzle to be solved. She was a presence, a quiet, steady force that challenged every excuse I had for keeping my distance. I remember her noticing small things, the way my voice grew tight when I was hiding pain, the restless energy in my hands when I wanted to say more but didn't. She caught those signals and never turned away. That patience changed me. Most people see curiosity as nosiness, but with her it was devotion. She wanted to know what hurt, not so she could fix it, but so she could simply be with me in the ache. That's what trust looks like. It's not a promise that pain will cease, but a vow that you won't sit inside it alone. I mistook her curiosity for interrogation at first. I resisted. I thought I had to be impenetrable, to prove I could withstand anything. She saw through it. She saw the fatigue beneath my drive, the regret beneath my confidence, the longing beneath my logic. She let me unravel, and for the first time, I didn't have to apologize for being a tangle of wanting and worry. Presence isn't passive. It is the most active thing we do for one another, choosing, over and over, to witness. She taught me that. She never demanded repairs, she only asked for honesty. She sat with my silence, held the questions I was afraid to answer. That's why her departure hit so hard. It wasn't just love I lost. It was the rarest kind of companionship, the kind that invites your flaws to breathe. After she left, I tried to rebuild my old architecture. I filled days with plans, nights with noise, projects, meetings, endless striving. From the outside, nothing changed. But from the inside, the silence was new. Not peaceful, but hollow. That's when I realized that connection is not a given. It's a living thing. It must be tended, not just applauded. Grief, I learned, is recognition turned inward. I stopped blaming and started seeing. I started remembering. The world spins on routine, but love is always an interruption. I miss being interrupted. I miss the small questions and the silent answers. I miss the daily chance to show up flawed and find that presence is still possible. I would give every trophy, every recognition, just to hear her ask those simple things again. Because what I never told her, what she deserves to know, is that her patience was the axis I spun around. She grounded me more than all the certainty I ever manufactured. That gravity, that gentle, unspoken pull remains. If she's listening, I hope she can feel it too. I wake now in quieter mornings, and the first thing I miss is the way she could bring peace to chaos without ever trying. I used to fill every silent moment with tasks, as if motion itself was justification. She'd watch me sometimes, not judging, just observing her presence quiet but undeniable. She made me see that rushing isn't living. If movement becomes escape, there's nowhere left to arrive but exhaustion. She deserved better than the version of me who was always halfway somewhere else. Looking back, I wonder how many times she invited me into her present, and I declined. How often did I trade depth for momentum, apology for attention? I thought closeness could be rescheduled, that love would wait on the sidelines while I finished chasing what couldn't love me back. But she didn't keep time that way. Her patience wasn't endless. but it was sincere. She was there, even when I tested the limits of her hope. There's a particular loneliness that comes after you realize you were trusted once, completely. That kind of trust is a gift, and it's always on loan. She gave me the chance to join her in life's rawest places, the ordinary mornings, the unspoken fears, the little victories. I saw it as softness first, maybe even as a distraction. Only now do I understand that presence is the real test. You can't earn trust by making promises for tomorrow. You prove it by showing up today, again and again. There were choices I made knowing they would cost me the smaller, quieter connections. I thought reward meant nothing if it required sacrifice. But connection doesn't steal from you, it recalibrates you. It tests what you believe about cost and worth. She brought me back to the small details: hands reaching, laughter after disappointment, staying awake just to hear stories that had nothing to do with achievement. Those were the investments I neglected, heartbeats I can't reclaim. It's easy to celebrate someone in the glow of honeymoon or victory, but she stayed through the silent middles, the empty stretches when meaning is hard to locate. That's what real love does. It endures the lulls as fiercely as the peaks. I resented that steadiness before I learned to honor it. Her presence, once taken for granted, now feels like a missing limb. I compensate, but the shape of what's gone is always there. And so my confession is simple. I acted as if love and ambition were rivals. She tried to teach me that they are partners, that without presence, success feels like exile, that even the strongest force will drift if it has nothing grounding it back to trust. If she's listening, I want her to know I see all the ways she showed up. I see it now. In every lost morning and every moment, I catch myself reaching for her steadiness. She taught me that gravity isn't what holds you down, it's what keeps you real. And I am real, finally, because she loved me through the process of arriving. Sometimes I'm surprised at how memory works. The big events fade, but her gestures remain crystalline. The way she'd brush a strand of hair aside while listening. The quiet encouragement in her eyes when I doubted myself. She paid attention in places most people overlook, and that changed my idea of intimacy forever. I used to think love required dramatic proof gestures, declarations, promises stretched to the horizon. But she lived a different lesson. Real intimacy is built on the accumulation of small consistencies. It is revealed in who stays for the mundane, who lingers when the spotlight dims. I know now that the cost of failing to reciprocate wasn't loud. It happened slowly, like an orbit drifting away from its sun. A thousand little dismissals, each one telling her that other things could come first. But the truth I refused to see, was that she was the gravitational center. Everything made sense when anchored in her presence. Away from her, the world spun faster, but felt less real. There's a humility that comes with this kind of realization. You see the places where pride masqueraded as independence, ambition as protection. My independence was often just avoidance, staying just busy enough to escape vulnerability. She saw through that defense. She never pushed. She simply waited for me to trust the value of her steadiness over the thrill of my uncertainty. Her patience was not passive, it was active faith. Every time she forgave a missed dinner, sat quietly through my storms, or reminded me I was loved when I felt most unworthy, she was investing in trust. That trust is rare. It carries you when you're empty. It's what you remember when the noise recedes and the world stops asking for your performance. If I could go back, I'd listen more. I'd slow down when she reached for me, instead of promising to make it up later. I'd sit through the discomfort of being fully seen instead of running for cover. Because presence is the only gift that never loses value. The more you give it, the more it grows. I hope she knows what she did, how her quiet presence taught me to show up for myself, to honor what was fragile as much as what was strong. The way she stayed wasn't just love, it was wisdom, patience, a daily decision to return, even when I gave her every reason to drift. Most people leave when it's hard. She stayed, then left only when she realized I hadn't yet arrived. This is why telling the truth matters. Not for closure, but for gratitude. I am grateful now for the woman who made her legacy, who made trust a daily act, who believed that even the most restless heart could still learn to be still. If she's listening, I hope she feels this gravity too. That quiet recognition of all the ways she saved what mattered in me, even when I couldn't see it. I didn't know how to thank her then, but I do now. And if there is a way forward, it is rooted in everything she taught me without saying a word. It's strange how long it takes to realize what was truly rare. I spent years thinking that progress would heal the emptiness, that one more success would close the gap inside. But what filled that space was never the noise of achievement. It was the hush of being understood, the warmth of being accepted before I could prove I was worthy. She gave me that. She made belonging feel effortless, simply by being consistent. That mattered more than any milestone. I can remember staring at her, as if searching for some flaw that would let me off the hook, some excuse to retreat. She never gave me one. Instead, she kept showing up with her quiet gaze and her careful questions, reminding me that presence wasn't a performance, it was an offering. She never tried to fix my darkness, only to witness it. That presence softened me. It dissolved my defenses. For the first time, I admitted things I was afraid to speak, even to myself. I think the heart learns timing by breaking first. When I had my chance, I mistook patience for permission to drift further. You always think there will be more time, more mornings, more words left unsaid, another chance to show up fully capable of loving openly. But opportunities for presence are fragile. They don't wait for us to get ready. She taught me that patience is not the same as passivity. It's an active trust in what might grow if two people are willing to stay. I wasn't willing. Not then. There's a gravity to confession, even now. The knowledge that my silence was not a lack of feeling, it was fear. Fear of changing. Fear of surrendering the image I'd built for a truth I wasn't sure I could live up to. She sensed it, always, and she never ran from it. Her compassion was a steady orbit, circling me until I could finally step outside the cage I'd built. That's why gratitude now aches alongside the regret. It's a reminder that not all growth feels like triumph. Sometimes it's bittersweet, marked by the things you finally see only in their absence. Time moves differently after a loss like that. You measure progress by how honestly you remember, how kindly you forgive, how reliably you return to the heart of what once saved you. She's not beside me, and yet her presence shapes every decision. When I lead others, I reach for her steadiness. When I struggle, I remember her patience. Her spirit lingers in all the places where ambition once shouted and connection whispered. Maybe that's the lesson she left: love never really disappears. It just changes the way it calls you home. Every day I find myself searching for that same gravity, and every day I try to become it. The unyielding faith, the gentle patience, the attentive presence. These are my guideposts now, the gifts she gave without ever naming them. If she's listening, I hope she feels the pull to a soft, invisible thread that keeps two souls orbiting the trust that presence always matters more than promise. She was the gravity that gave my journey meaning, and because of her, I'm learning to stay, finally, even with myself. Some evenings, when the world grows quiet, I find myself wondering how differently things might have unfolded if I'd understood the difference between showing up and truly being present. The world teaches us to count hours, miles, achievements, but not heartbeats, not the honest moments when we allow ourselves to pause, to notice, to absorb what's actually unfolding between two people. She taught me, and keeps teaching me, that the miracle isn't in arrival, it's in attention. She never required me to be her hero. She needed honesty, not perfection. She welcomed my doubts, my flaws, my unfinished ideas. It's easy to love someone in the highlight reel, harder in the dim light of uncertainty. That's where her love manifested, where words faded, but her commitment endured. Some nights I replay our quiet intervals, the moments when neither of us spoke and yet everything important was said. In those silences, I found more comfort than in any declaration. Presence became a form of healing, a daily evidence of devotion. She never hurried my growth. She left space for it to happen, unforced. So much of what passes for connection these days feels transactional, conditional, impatient, demanding. Real love waits. Real love asks, "How are you, really?" Real love listens, instead of instructs. She was the first to do that for me without needing repayment in actions or accolades. It's taken time, but I think I've finally learned to appreciate the courage required to stay open. Closing off is easy, withdrawing is familiar, but being vulnerable, being available for the small things, even when they hurt, is what makes trust endure. She put that trust in me with every act of faith. I failed often, but she stayed a little longer than most would. If I could say one thing to her now, it would be this: thank you for making patience your gift, for never forcing the fragile, for blessing the in between. You taught me that connection isn't a single moment of clarity, it's a string of ordinary days that build a lifetime. You were the builder, I was the wanderer. Now, I'm learning to stay with the process. Ambition without intimacy empties you. The cost is a heart that's always somewhere else. She understood that. She didn't fight my restlessness. She simply anchored our trust in patience and presence. Her legacy in me is this: stay available, be honest, honor the smallest details. She may never know the impact. Maybe that's how grace works: invisible, constant, quietly life changing. If she's listening, I hope my gratitude reaches her, wherever she chooses to be present now. The world spins on achievement, but love's axis is always attention. And because of her, I am learning to revolve around what truly endures. Sometimes I replay old days in my mind, her laughter echoing in the kitchen, the simplicity of a meal shared without distractions, the gently tangled conversations before sleep. Those moments weren't grand, but they were golden. I want to say I recognized their worth then, but the truth is I rarely stopped moving long enough to realize I was living what I'd someday ache for. Ambition made me restless. I thought my work would speak for me, that the magnitude of my dreams might repay the intimacy I was too afraid to offer in real time. It's a lie we tell ourselves, that greatness excuses distance. But closeness is the real measure. She measured in nearness, in gestures that never required applause. When I finally allowed myself to be seen, what I feared most happened. My imperfections surfaced. I was impatient, distracted, sometimes sharp-edged, where I should have been gentle. Instead of pulling away, she listened. She stayed. She noticed. Her presence was a constant invitation to come back to myself, to the unvarnished, imperfect truth. That acceptance healed what my own ambition never could. Sometimes I'd catch her studying my face as if trying to understand some equation only she could solve. I didn't recognize it at first, but what she was searching for wasn't a solution, it was connection. That's how her love moved, seeking understanding, not control. That distinction changed me in ways I'm still learning to name. She taught me curiosity about her, about myself, about the silent corners of our love that never made it into words. She never let the everyday details go unnoticed. She picked up where I faltered, carrying our quiet hopes without complaint or ceremony. I realize now that resilience wasn't born from my determination alone, but from her patience navigating the storms I created. She handled my weather with grace. If I could speak to her today, I'd say thank you for enduring instead of escaping, for softening the edges of my restless ambition, for believing that the ordinary effort of loving well was as heroic as any conquest. I didn't see it then, but she was right. Steadfastness is the rarest form of bravery. All those moments I once hurried through now linger in my memory, reminding me that time isn't money, it's presence. She was the richest experience I ever had, and all she wanted in return was the simple, undivided presence I'm still practicing to give. If she's listening to this, I hope these words find her at a time when she too needs the reassurance of having mattered beyond measure. She changed the orbit of my life. She taught me that the weight of love is what keeps the heart from drifting out of reach. And every lesson she left with me is now my compass, guiding me back, again and again, to the art of truly staying. There are days now when forgiveness feels almost tangible, as if it lingers in the spaces she once occupied, quietly offering me permission to release regret. Forgiveness isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the steady pulse beneath memory, a reassurance that you're allowed to begin again, no matter how late the realization arrives. She taught me that, even as I was failing to notice. Her kindness was never conditional, never dependent on my readiness to reciprocate. It simply existed, a gentle truth waiting for me to step into it. When the world pressed in, when ambition became a shield against vulnerability, she held up a mirror. In her eyes, I saw not the titles or the noise, but the human hunger beneath it all, the longing to belong, the need to be seen and accepted for what I was, not what I presented. That was the rescue. Not a grand gesture, but daily, unassuming affirmation. She let me stumble. She let me repair. The gift was never certainty. It was the freedom to change my mind, to grow, to confess without punishment. I reflect now on all the ways her patience let love deepen. She was clear in her boundaries, gentle in her reminders, firm only in her belief that closeness would require both courage and humility. I failed her many times, not in action, but in presence, in commitment to the moment. Yet she saw possibility in those failures, sunlight in the shadow, a future even when the present was muddled. Her faith exceeded my own. At my lowest, I avoided. At my highest, I performed. She welcomed both extremes. In her company, I learned that trust is forgiving, and forgiveness is what allows love to endure setbacks rather than collapse. She never withheld affection on my worst days. That is the evidence of real connection, its ability to sustain kindness in the face of disappointment. Ambition carves its own path, but it often leaves scars. She was the salve, the gentle presence that restored what celebration had thinned and criticism had corroded. I don't want to romanticize her patience, I want to honor it. The dailiness, the repetition, the willingness to show up in the small moments that accumulate into a lifetime. I would tell her, if she could hear me now, that her capacity for forgiveness is the reason I know how to forgive myself. She set the standard in silence, with grace, making space for the man I've now become. A man who finally values patience, clarity, trust. Her legacy is not in what she tolerated, but in what she consistently loved. And I carry that forward, practicing every day to make my attention more like hers, undistracted, kind, enduring. If she's out there listening, I hope she feels the blessing of having changed someone's life without needing recognition. She was my dawn. She brought the morning, even when I failed to see the sun.